call. I do really like these. I do really love these land calls, and I don't know. I kind of feel quite excited about being a potential part of a I don't know, a developing network, I guess. So yeah, this is us. A little tiny bit of background first, really, is I'm lucky enough to be a farmer up here between the mountains and the sea in northwest Wales. And some of you have noticed that I haven't always been a farmer. I actually used to be an ecologist, and for a long time I was a filmmaker, and I was part of a team making programs like Planet Earth and Frozen Planet and Life. And I was super lucky when I made those. I got to spend lots of time sat in some of the world's richest ecosystems, and and I sat there and I was kind of pondering what I and humanity have to do next. And to be honest, I didn't have a clue. But then I found this guy, and I got a little bit obsessed, really, probably overly obsessed by Bill Mollison. But it made an awful lot of sense. And so after spending a decade of kind of living in and observing those really well functioning ecosystems, I had to become a bit more domesticated. And so I set about becoming a permaculture farmer. And I really wanted to kind of feel part of an ecosystem. I wanted to grow babies and cabbages, and I wanted to kind of know every bird's nest forever. That was my plan. And I'm so far from knowing every bird's nest. It's unbelievable. But farming we are doing, and farming should be one of the most privileged and beautiful jobs in the world. I mean, it's got to be one of the most important jobs in the world. And yet it's got the lowest rates of pay, and it's got one of the highest rates of suicide. And so I saw that as a little bit of a warning, and we really had to think with fresh eyes on how we should farm. Um, and so I've got two advantages. One is I've got this ecological background, and the other one is I didn't know a thing about farming. So taking that, how do we know we want? So how do we get there without going bonkers? I think it'd be super easy to take on a farm and take a couple of permaculture books and just have this big, try and just roll all these things all over it and just get your knickers in a massive twist and basically just fall over. It's a big challenge, isn't it? And humans are really poor with complex systems. So I found this thing called holistic decision making, basically, and really loved it. And we're good at complicated. So we're good at computers and rockets and things like that, but we're rubbish at anything with an ology on the end. We're rubbish at complex systems, ecology, sociology, economics. So with holistic decision making, we've got a route to basically getting what you want from life. So the base principle is that you decide what you want, what you really, really want, and you make it become more true. And it sounds a bit guffy, doesn't it? But just imagine if like 10% of the decisions you make more aligned to making what you want out of life more true. Just think how much faster you would get there. And so I think permaculture design is itself a little bit rubbish at that kind of setting context and decision making side of it. And I think bringing the two together is a bit like it's bringing in the how and it's bringing in the why, and together they're really powerful. So the farm works in the following holistic context. So we've got an abundant, resilient, productive farm that feeds and is part of our community. We have healthy, vibrant soil and biodiversity. We have sufficient income and resilient finances, that the farm helps people believe that a more beautiful world is possible and worth working for, and that we've got a diversity of visitors to the farm, and that the farm becomes valued by them in their lives. And so this is us. 8 years ago, we bought a derelict small house and 30 hectares of pretty unfenced, rundown land. And we're on this mission really to prove that you can buy a small farm on a mortgage, that you can make it pay through producing real food, and at the same time you can build soil, build biodiversity, build social capital, and most importantly that you can enjoy it. And I kind of feel like if I can do that, then most people could do it too. And if many people could do it and make the same context that we're doing, well, to be honest, like, I don't think save the world's quite right, but we can definitely do something quite good with that. So one thing's essential if we're going to achieve those contexts and make a small farm work is that we layer together lots of different enterprises, and each of those enterprises have to fit within the scale of the farm. They have to be super efficient. They have to be really complementary, and they have to be always building our future resource base. And I don't think we can make the farm work without permaculture. It gives us lots in terms of like looking at like loss and waste and filling niches and turning problems and excesses into opportunities. But that base concept really, always working with nature and always having, I don't know, I kind of feel like if we've got nature on our side, like how can we lose? So what are those enterprises? Well, we've got a 50 share market garden. And so we feed 50 families and a few cafes, most of their veg between June and December, might be late June this year. And we've got 100% pasture fed sheep and cattle. So we tend to do one meat box each month. And then we've got a pastured 300 hen laying flock. And we've also do a little bit of tourism, and well, that's us really. We do lots of other things as well, but that's the kind of main thing. So how does it play out on the ground? So how do we look at those natural systems and replicate them to a small farm in Wales? Well, I think some of it comes back to looking at what is Earth's most productive terrestrial soil building ecosystem, and that's savanna grassland. And these are kind of grassland tree systems that used to support the biggest animal biomass on the planet. And they allowed grasses to fully express themselves. They went a long time between grazed, and then when they were grazed really hard for a little short period of time. And it's ruminants that have always been kind of moving and often condensed by predators, so wolves or bears or whatever, things with big teeth. And I know this all looks a bit kind of hot and sweaty for Wales, a bit equatorial, but there's loads of lessons in it. And then there's another really productive system which fits really well into Wales, and that's forest glades. And I think if you look back a few thousand years, these would have been where it was at. This was kind of the place to be. And so that habitat, which is really kind of woodland edge, is one of the most productive parts of the woodland. And it's also where our fruit crops belong. So we've got the plum, the pear, the apple, the nut, the currant, the bramble. They're all part of that. And so what could be more exciting than dividing up our farm into lots of small pastures where our animals are kept in a natural herd, they're moving every day, and they're always surrounded by this kind of rich woodland edge influenced kind of agroforestry lanes. It's kind of like lots of linear forest gardens. And so what we did is we've broken up the main pasture into 32 day-sized grazing units. So these electric fences are our wolves basically. And the area in between the fences, which goes along all these rows, is our woodland edge. And it's this multifunctional kind of complex system that really kind of starts to sing. And so it gives us shelter and shade, it gives us browse for the animals, it gives us much better controlled grazing, and it also fits in brilliantly with kind of this idea of just adding more diversity in different layers to the farm. It makes the whole landscape much more three-dimensional really. So on our poorer north-facing land, we put in lots of kind of cheap, edible, fast-growing trees, things that there's for livestock to eat. And then on our better, flatter land, we put in more top fruit and soft fruit and other support species. They're kind of like, so mainly apple and plum and pear, cherry, and there's a shrub layer like blackcurrant, raspberry, gooseberry, sea buckthorn, aronia. There's lots of things really. And then on those kind of like smaller, lower layers, we've got comfrey and mint and buddleia and pumpkins and rhubarb, loads of things. And this has kind of become like the backbone of the farm. And then in nature, what would follow those herds? Well, it would be birds. And so we've got a 300 hen laying flock that every other day moves along those kind of fruit tree lanes. And again, this has been really incredible for our pasture. And we're now starting to see that on our hen grazed land, we're able to get like twice the production of forage for the cattle as we do from our non-chicken grazed areas. It's really powerful. And then veg, I was vegetarian all my life, really, till I came here. But I'm always very aware that actually cultivation for vegetables and cereals is one of the most destructive things we can do. But we managed to swap over. So we've got a big no dig market garden. So we've got 1,000 meters squared of 10-meter beds that are 75 centimeters wide. And they're also actually all punctuated by these fruit tree perennial rows. So every 10 beds, we've got those in. And then we've got two quite modest polytunnels. And it's this kind of whole diet approach, really. It's kind of using the farm and adding all those little layers in of that whole diet, which means that we can produce the meat, eggs, veg, and probably hopefully next year the milk for at least 50 families. So our other customer base is tourists. And when we first came here, I was really skeptical about this. I was really like, if I'm going to go and be a farmer, I've got to produce food, and that was what I had to do. But actually, I think one of our biggest problems is humans disconnect from nature, isn't it? And so we've created this small range of handmade kind of cozy spaces where people can come and spend a few days just living in the woods, and they can eat regenerative food, and they can just kind of sit back and think about what matters in the world, really. I'm a big believer that if everybody listened to a dawn chorus once every few years, that the world would be in a much better place. And actually, I've added it into my context, my farm, that I want to kind of measure our dawn chorus every year. And so one of my main core contexts for farm management is that every year that dawn chorus gets much, much richer as we go along. Yeah. Now, probably, I don't know, we're all busy people, and this slideshow has probably made me look really busy. But what's the biggest element of any permaculture design? Well, it's people, isn't it? It all comes back to that. And I think it's so essential that we see humans as a power of force, of good for our planet. And people are our farm's secret weapon. We kind of need them, really, to kind of deal with all those different layers of complexity that we're putting in. And every year those layers of complexity get easier to manage, but we keep adding more as well. So we've always had a really fun, hardworking team of people on the farm. And this year we're employing 4 people full time, and we're running an internship program. So the idea is that by the end of summer with us, you can leave Henbant able to run a farm like this of their own. We ask for a commitment from March to October, and we work super hard, but we eat really well. And then each week, probably we're moving it out so it's a bit more spread through the week, but we try and do at least kind of 5 hours of training. So we go over a PDC syllabus, we go over the regenerative agriculture masterclass, which is something that I mentor on with Richard Perkins, and then we do lots of holistic decision making, and we go into real depth with all the farm enterprise as well. I think it's really important, and it's something that's important probably for the land network is that kind of like just open sharing of everything, that data and the financial side and all that. And I'm actually really excited that this October we're going to run the first of our own. We've run other people's courses here before, and it's a bit like Anne was saying, like it, when you pay someone to run a course, it kind of takes all the money out of it anyway. But so we're going to run our own Making Small Farms Work course, which will be a short 3-day version of what I've just talked about, really. So what's next? Well, I'm really excited because we've got plans to carry out some really fun projects and kind of break out of this bit of the farm. So if you see us, the whole farm's 80 acres. And so far, really, we're producing all this food for people off this 20 acres, which is around the house. And we've never really broken out of it. It's a bit like that idea of you kind of start from your front door and work outwards. And so this bit used to be a quarry. And so much of this area has got pretty crazy contours. And the plan is that what we're going to do is we're going to go and kind of take the flat sections, and then we'll knock around with the dig a little bit and kind of create. So we've got kind of like a flat kind of forest glade. And then in between those, we kind of build these big kind of like food forest areas, really. that fit in between these little kind of woodland glades. And these will all be designed so that they're like a day's grazing, probably something like that. It'll be about an acre each. And that's one thing. And then one other thing we had, which was I was a bit sad about at the time, is we used to have this quite nice for Sitka woodland, this Sitka spruce alder mix. And who can spot the pigs in this picture? So it was harvested 2 years ago. So it was all windblown, and we harvested it 2 years ago. And now we're dividing the whole area down using keyline design into 19-meter wide grazing lanes. So they'll be divided by nut and fruit trees. And what we're doing is this year we're running pigs through it. And the idea is that we run the pigs through it this summer. And this is a fortnight later after they've been in there, and every fortnight they move to a new paddock. And then what we're going to do over winter is we're going to kind of clear one decent path through the middle so we can get a tractor in, and we're going to drop a load of bales, and we're going to basically bale graze through the whole area over winter with some pretty tough cattle. And it seems a bit, I don't know if it's a bit ambitious, but I think if we trust in nature, I think it'll happen. Yeah. And then, well, our busiest thing that we're doing at the moment really is building work. So we're busy building a veg processing space. So last year we only did 30 veg boxes. This year we're doing, well, 50 families and probably a few cafes on top. So the equivalent of 65 boxes really. So we need a decent processing space. And we've also noticed that we've got a really dedicated customer base of like slightly happy to like step around our mess customers. But as we kind of reach out, and also actually what I'm trying to do is, instead of recovering a bigger range of area and feeding lots of people, what I'm trying to do is kind of try and kind of localize our customer base. So those kind of 50 families that we feed are all within, you know, almost kind of like within walking distance basically. But to do that, we're having to kind of tidy up. So we're building a little sexy shop, and we're building this veg processing space. And then we're also building a permaculture cafe and a library. I've got a bit obsessed by buying and reading books for quite a long time. So we're building that, and we're building a little classroom and a big barn. And we're trying to do all that for this Welsh permaculture gathering in September. So I don't know if we're gonna